Staying with those live visuals from the Hyderabad house, just about time. Looks like at the top of 4 p.m. is when the two leaders will step out. That's what we're given to understand. Just 3 or 4 minutes by then, by that happens. A little bit of a delay. That's because of the extended chat session that the two leaders have had, Narendra Modi and President Barack Obama. Mohan Guruswamy, Rakesh Sood, Major General G.D. Bakshi, thank you for staying on with us. We are also joined by Sanjay Puri at this point. Mr. Puri, let me come across to you first. Your reactions on the developments. Modi and Obama sit and have a cup of tea outside in a Shamiana. The news break comes here on Times Now that the tracking clause, the flagging clause has been done away with. US has backed off on that. A major breakthrough that's happened on the nuclear deal.
Well, I think it's a very significant development. This was something that American companies have been asking since they were pretty much instrumental along with President Bush in getting this deal done. And obviously the French and the Russians have been benefiting and American companies have been sitting on the side. So it is a big win for India, Prime Minister Modi, but it's also a big win for President Obama. He can go back and said that now American companies are going to have an opportunity. And so I think it's a win-win situation. I wouldn't just call it a win for Prime Minister Modi.
Well, what do you think? Where do you think India would have ceded ground? I asked this question to some of our other panelists. I'm asking this to you. Where do you think India would have ceded ground to the US on the nuclear deal?
Well, because this nuclear deal is very symbolic for American business interests in India. There was a lot that was promised to American companies when this deal was being done to get India out of the pariah status. And it is really a real big test. Will India hold up its end of the bargain? So that's why this became, like the retroactive tax issue, this has become a real crucial test of India holding up its end of the bargain. So that's why I think Prime Minister Modi wants to get past this, because this is a question that comes up with every Indian leader that comes to Washington. What's happening to the nuclear liability bill? Now this can be put past and we can really move to more substantive issues. Because from an economic standpoint, American companies are not going to get so much business, but strategically it is very important.
Rakesh Sood, you agree that it's all done, or there are issues that need to be ironed out, some other clauses too, which are sticky points?
Well, I think that there were two aspects. One complication or one hurdle was the US law, and that is where the US has shifted and they are prepared to use presidential waiver from administrative tracking. The second hurdle was some of the ambiguities in Indian liability law, and I am pretty confident that on that certain assurances would have been conveyed, taking into account that these are consistent with our liability law and will not face judicial challenge. So if these two hurdles have been taken care of, I think this civil nuclear cooperation can now be operationalized. But what is important, most important here is what it shows is that when there is a personal chemistry between the two leaders, when they are committed, then obviously they can catalyze the relationship to the vision that they see for this relationship. And that is, in my view, the most important takeaway here.
True. Mohan Guruswamy, G.D. Bakshi, coming across to you after a quick chat with Sanjay Chaudhary, our National Affairs editor, who's right inside the Hyderabad house. I'm sure you can feel the buzz around you. Sanjay, take us through what you're picking up in terms of the private moments, the one-on-one that Narendra Modi and Barack Obama had.
Yes, that was the big moment. We have heard that this was a time when the really important issues, whether it's the nuclear issue, whether it's the defense issues, would get discussed. And they would get sorted out between the two of them. What we had heard is that if there were little niggles left, if there were decisions that had to be taken at the highest level, after everything had to be sorted out, then this would happen at exactly this point, when the two leaders were just there together and nobody else was there, not even security people, not even aides, not even associates, just the two leaders, the Prime Minister and the President. And it was then that these major issues have and would have got sorted out.
But I'm sure you've been interacting. Quick question again to you, with a lot of the delegates present there, even from the US press corps. What have they have to say in terms of the camaraderie, the bonhomie, the body language between the two leaders, the ease of communication that they have seen?
Well, there is a positivity. it was expected that the two leaders would get along well, because initially when Prime Minister Modi went to America in the autumn, they had got along very well. And we've heard from people that they had told President Obama themselves that, look, take some time, take some special time with Narendra Modi. And that is why Obama had taken him to the Dr. Martin Luther King Memorial. This time too, it appears to be a continuation of that. Both sides have got along very well. Both leaders now know each other reasonably well, and they have got along fairly well.
Right, Sanjay, do stay with us on the phone. We'll come across to you. Staying with these pictures, Major General Bakshi, one big hurdle or one big sticky issue as far as the nuke deal we've brought to our viewers already. In that joint statement, are you expecting terror to figure somewhere? And India-US joint efforts in terms of countering terror?
I am most certainly expecting that there would be some statements on the issue, the very vexed issue of terror. And, there have been speculations in the media that the United States and India, in terms of intelligence sharing, are trying to talk of the 5 eyes type of agreement which they have signed with some NATO English-speaking countries, which later became 9 eyes, and with the addition of India, will go beyond 14 eyes, wherein a lot of this decryption, the decoding, breaking the codes of a lot of the terrorist communications will be shared with India on a real-time basis, actionable basis. That will be a major, major step forward, and I'm certainly hoping that we will hear some of that. I would like to also, look forward to what has been discussed on Afghanistan. It cannot be that, Pakistan has anointed itself as the regional superpower and now has extraterritorial rights in Afghanistan. In its holy quest for the holy grail of deep, depth, strategic depth in Afghanistan, Pakistan cannot be given the rights to, be the preponderant power in Afghanistan, Central Asia, and India can be, very conveniently excluded and asked to look oceanwards and deal with China.
True. And Rakesh Sood, your thoughts?
We have very major strategic interests there. We would like to see that. Yeah. There were some speculations in the media about India's support for the battle against the ISIS. And I would also be interested in hearing what has been the outcome from there. I'm sure something would be said there. There have been some very visible reproofs administered by the United States towards Pakistan as far as its support to terrorism goes. And as we are aware that they have been now forced to act, at least symbolically, in terms of banning the Jamaat-ud-Dawa. How far the Pakistan army and the ISI will allow the civilian dispensation to execute that or carry that out in practice remains to be seen. Right. We would very carefully like to monitor what happens across the border. But the fact of the end is that it is about time that the hypocrisy and double standards on terrorism were recognized and ended. Indian lives don't come cheap. They don't come any cheaper than the lives of American or European citizens.
Just bringing in our other panelists in also in this, Rakesh Sood, your point of view, India, US and Afghanistan, should this be the triangle that would be encouraged as far as the issue of Afghanistan is concerned in terms of these 3 nations working together? And US has made the right noises before coming to India. Barack Obama, be it in his State of the Union address, John Kerry's visit in Pakistan, yes, and the following banning of Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jamaat-ud-Dawa and these outfits.
Yeah. No, very true. I think here the key point is that US and India have a vision of Afghanistan to see Afghanistan develop as an independent, stable, secure country which is on the path of development where all its multiple ethnic communities can coexist and co-prosper. Now that is the kind of vision that we have, that is the kind of vision that US also has, and that is the vision that the Afghans share for their country. And to that extent it gives us an extremely important convergence of views in terms of how we have to see the new Afghan government strengthen itself and take the political transition and the security transition forward in a stable manner.
True. Mohan Guruswamy, do you concur that terror should be way up the list along with trade, along with all these deals which are happening and along with the nuclear liability and nuclear deal coming through? Terror should be one issue where cooperation should be greater and should be addressed?
I agree. Terror should be very high on our agenda, and terror emanates from Pakistan. And I agree on that the US should bring pressure on Pakistan to rein in the terrorists operating from its territory in India and in Afghanistan. So all that I think is happening, but the Americans are also limited by the fact that they need Pakistan for their supply lines. As long as there's a US presence in Afghanistan, the Pakistani lines should be made available to them. So I think to the extent possible they're trying to act. But as far as our interest in Afghanistan is concerned, there are limits to what we can do because Pakistan sits in between. We have no borders with Afghanistan. We have no link with Afghanistan except a historical link and an emotional link. So I think what we can do is circumscribe severely. But we would like Afghanistan to settle down. That is something which the US has to play a more active role, and Pakistan does have a role in that, whether we like it or no. So we can't tell Pakistan, you stop acting. They share the biggest border with Afghanistan, and that is the border which is actually is harming Pakistan. And I think the realization is coming in Pakistan that terrorism from Afghanistan cannot function on one side, that it has already taken good parts of Pakistan away in it. So whether this regime will government or whether Pakistan will survive is something we'll have to see. I don't think we should get too exercised about what they say about Afghanistan now. But I think the other important thing is we should come out is that the US has got certain kinds of money, it's got technology, it's got private capital, but that is not good enough, that's not big enough for us. What we need for our infrastructure are sovereign funds. And the sovereign funds are with Japan and with China.
Right.
So, I don't think, this is going to be a US...
Sorry to interrupt you. Just showing our viewers another exclusive picture here. This is from when the lunch was on. The delegates from both sides over lunch diplomacy inside the Hyderabad house. What is positive is in every picture that we have seen, the energy. There is a very positive vibe. It's lively. It's not dead and distraught. It's very positive, and the energy and it's engaging. And that's what comes through with all the pictures that we have seen so far. Mohan Guruswamy, sorry to interrupt you there, but just going across on the same point, taking it forward to Sanjay and trying to understand from Sanjay. Sanjay, how important will be the rest of the issues? Now, we've talked about terror. We've talked about what in US's outlook will be towards Afghanistan, India, about terror in this region. How do they address the issue called Pakistan and terror being fomented on Pakistani soil? How will terror also dominate, because trade and everything else will not prosper till there is peace in this region?
I think terror is important for United States too. Obviously, when United States thinks of terror, they generally think of ISIS.
Yes, if you look right behind me, you will find 4 flags there, the tricolor and 2 stars and stripes. They will be sitting right in front of those, the 2 chairs. There is a door right next to it, and they will come through that door. First, of course, the American delegation and then the Indian delegation will come through, and then finally the Prime Minister of India and the President of America will speak. Both will make statements. It's still not clear whether they will take questions or not. But after that, there is what is called a press meeting. And in that press meeting, they will issue statements. We will have to see whether they take questions or not. What we've heard is they may not take questions. But that said, there is a hope that at least their opening statements are substantive and give us an idea of what really happened in the meeting. There are very big issues here to be discussed, whether it relates to nuclear issues, whether it relates to defense issues or power.
Will the Prime Minister speak in Hindi, or will he choose English like he did in Australia?
Well, that is up to the Prime Minister. The short answer is we do not know. A lot of times, in India at least, the Prime Minister speaks in Hindi. The last 2 functions of a similar kind, the Prime Minister deliberately chose to speak in Hindi. At this time too, it is expected that he will speak in Hindi, but on very rare occasions,
we'll see how that pans out, Sanjay. I think we have time for a quick comment from Sanjay and Mohan Guruswamy as we stay with these pictures. Sanjay, when we are talking about the issues that really matter, ease of business in terms and sharing intelligence, information, technology, how much will US lean in towards in that aspect towards India, and how much can India promise ease of business, clearing off the red tape, breaking down a lot of the archaic, inane laws?
Well, I think Americans are looking to be very receptive in terms of sharing technology. I think the lead has been provided by this president, by his coming here, by his getting this deal done on the nuclear side. So I think this is India's opportunity, because President Obama is looking at his legacy now, and this relationship is going to be part of his legacy. So I would say America needs, or at least President Obama needs India as much as India needs United States. And as far as ease of doing business, I think what Americans are really looking for is consistent policy, transparent policy, and they are starting to see some of that with those ordinances that have been passed, which hopefully will turn into legislation. So the signs are all very positive, but as Americans have a saying, trust but verify. I think that's where it's going to really come down to, whether they can talk the talk and walk the walk.
Can India do that, Mohan Guruswamy? Can India talk the talk and walk the walk when they promise ease of business? When they make these promises, the political executive, will the bureaucracy and the establishment be able to honor it?
Well, let's get one thing very clear. Foreign investment, the biggest component of foreign investment is Indian funds, which come round tripping out. If you look at analyze our who's investing in India, 60% of our investment comes through Mauritius, and most of it through Indian companies, ECBs. So India must look good to Indians itself. That is very important. When it looks good to our own people who bring the money back from abroad, then it will look good to the Americans also. So we're not creating conditions only for Americans or for Europeans. It's actually to make it better for our own people, because there's so much of Indian money invested abroad and sitting abroad that needs to come back. That's what, even in China, the biggest investor are Chinese. So I think we've got to get this clear. We are not going to do anything just to make the Americans happy. We have to do it to facilitate our own growth. So with that in mind, I think Prime Minister Modi understands this well. At best of times, the United States never accounted for more than 12-13% of the FDI in China or in India, and that will not change. True. But I think ease of business, banking business, all that needs to get. Atmosphere needs to be cleared up, and I think that is being done. I think Prime Minister Modi is invested heavily in this relationship, but he's also realistic to know that the US government doesn't have any funds. It's US business which has funds, the banks which have funds, and sovereign funds have to come from Japan and China. So we have to see what kind of money comes from America, How much of that money comes? I don't think,
Swami, the entire geopolitical situation as far as investments into India are concerned is certainly going to be an area that India is going to look at very, very closely. But Rakesh, the question really here is once again the fine print of the nuclear deal that will be looked at very closely. There will be some big ticket announcements for the atmospherics, but is it really the breakthrough in the nuclear deal that we'll be looking for in the joint statement, or are there other issues that you would be really hoping would come in apart from the nuclear deal and defense deals?
I think the nuclear issue will be one of the major breakthroughs because unfortunately it has been hanging fire for since 2010, since we passed our liability law. So since the last 5 years, it has been hanging fire and it casts a shadow. The second aspect of the nuclear deal that I must point out here is that if we go back to 2005, where the idea of civil nuclear cooperation was first accepted by both India and United States, it was also said that India will become a member of the export control regimes, particularly the Nuclear Suppliers Group, the Missile Technology Control Regimes, Wassenaar Arrangement, and the Australia Group. Now in September, the joint statement says that the US considers that India is ready to become a member. But what had happened in the last 2-3 years was that the US push, because the US is a member and the US has to push hard to get India in, the US push had sort of diminished. Now, with this restored momentum, I would hope that the US will be able to pick up the momentum once again. It will be able to pick up the slack and push forward so that India can take its rightful place as a member of these export control regimes and sit at the nuclear high table.
Rakesh, so you were also saying that you were also saying that Barack Obama is trying to create his legacy. He's trying to leave his legacy behind. How much should the Indian establishment be confident that 2 years down the line, when the president changes hands, and it all changes, the political scenario in America changes, things for India won't differ?
Well, we have to understand one thing, that as far as US-India relations is concerned, there is a very strong bipartisan support in the United States for this. Now, whatever be President Obama's difficulties with the US Congress and the US Senate and the polarization between Democrats and Republicans in the United States, at least a stronger relationship with India is one issue on which both parties agree. So if President Obama is looking at legacy, I would think that there are three basic issues where he has made a fair amount of investment. And we can see, one is the India relationship. And India is critical for counterterrorism, for the Asia pivot, which is very much part of US policy. The second issue I think we saw recently is his reaching out to Cuba. Now that is again a historical issue, and if he can make a dent there, then that is also part of his diplomatic legacy. The third issue, and this again is very interesting because it provides a role for India, is his emphasis on dealing with the Iranian nuclear issue through diplomatic means. And in that, as we saw, there is a certain lobby within the US which is not very happy about it. And so therefore, but so far President Obama has made it clear, and most recently he also said this in his State of the Union address, that he would veto any new sanctions on Iran as long as Iran continued to keep to its side of the bargain. So I think if you are looking at President Obama's foreign policy legacy, I think these are three areas to look for. And of these three, clearly the US-India is the least contentious in Washington.
Clearly, President Obama and India looking at that legacy issue. That's why even when most people say that President Obama is entering a lame duck phase in his presidency, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is betted on this particular visit from President Barack Obama to take the India-US story forward. Maruf, how do you see India? I mean, does the United States look at India as a pivot in Southeast to counter China? And how important in this equation is what US does with Pakistan? Because that clearly will be the cornerstone of how much forward India and America can move forward, depending on how much US actually can keep Pakistan in check.
Well, India is certainly an important sort of country in America's calculations about its policies in Southeast Asia, where China has been flouting virtually all the international arrangements on maritime laws of the sea in terms of what should be the territorial claims of a country in terms of assets in sea, because China seems to, every time it suits China, draw up historical legacy and say that we've been players in South China Sea from 273 BC, if I remember. That's what the Chinese claim is. So therefore, there is that element. But I think America's pivot to Asia was repositioning of its forces in itself towards Asia by trying to get its own naval presence become heavily leaning towards Asia and the Asian strategic landscape. I'm told that in the next 10 years, America hopes to have 60% of its naval forces operating in Asia to counter China's muscle flexing. And China is doing a lot of submarine activities. It's soon going to get more aggressive with its aircraft carrier fully operational, etc., etc. So therefore, there is that Indian role that India is being expected by the United States to play as part of a triangle or a diamond formation in Asia to counter China, including Japan, Australia, India, and the United States. Some of that is already falling into place. But I think more importantly, the United States is looking at India as a country which will help the US in a number of initiatives that it's trying to put in place in Asia. For example, if the US doesn't have India alongside it, with Obama wanting to pull out...
Maruf, sorry to interrupt. Just letting you know that we are also staying with the visuals at Hyderabad House. There is a spokesperson who's just come, delegate has just come out and asked the entire gathering there of journalists to settle down. So it's just a matter of a minute that we would have the leaders walking out. Carry on, Maruf. There they are, Syed Akbaruddin, and we see him.